Now we discuss what we've heard. Mauricio, it was a wonderful message, and I'm so grateful in the midst of everything you've been going through this week that you would be faithful and still bring us a message. I thank you. You know, there's so many things. There's such a deep message here. You know, the plague had caused 24,000 deaths. Right through the stories, all our stories in the Torah, every time we see these types of deaths, we just have to go back and look at what happened prior to that, when at the time of the golden calf. What happened? Moses called the Levites to him and said, "Go out and kill your own brothers, your own families." And here, this act, these acts are not what Pinchas did, what Moshe did. These are not taking revenge or acts of violence, as you say. It's a way of stopping God's anger from destroying our people. Today, obviously, we're not going to go out and we're not going to murder all these people or kill all these people, even though sometimes we would like to. But what we have to remember is, what is the essence of what Pinchas did? And it shows us that these are not random acts of a vengeful God. There's always the root. Israel had given herself over to Baal Peor, which was even worse than Baal. You know, it's funny, in Spanish, Peor means worse, doesn't it? Yeah. And I liked what you said also about Joshua was authorized to succeed Moshe, just as the speakers today, you and I, are authorized to succeed our rabbi. We have been put in that position. We have been, we have like a smicha upon us that we can continue the work of our beloved rabbi. Now, the other thing that I thought of also is sometimes Israel is accused of being violent. Israel is accused of things that are absolutely not true. When Israel goes after her enemies, it's not out of an act of violence. It's out of an act of defending herself. What we have to pray for Israel is that God would open the eyes of our people so that we will stop turning to other gods. And we may not even realize all the ways we turn to other gods. And that's something I think that's important, really important to discuss. For me, and I think Miriam too, those of us who were involved in the New Age and who went into Hinduism and Buddhism and all these different isms, those gods were very, very tangible. But there are other gods in our lives, like the worship of the golden calf, like the worship of money, education, even our pride can become a god. So anything that replaces the God of Israel is something that we need to take a look at. So thank you, Mauricio. If you have anything you'd like to say, or Miriam, do you want to say something before Mauricio?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mauricio. Again, I love what you said about the difference, for example, sexuality in its context that God gave us, and when it's almost like it's fallen, like our lives are fallen from totally being divorced from God. And the same with defecation. There are even perversions now where that is part of a sexual act. Nowadays even there are all sorts of perversions, but it's a perfectly clean act. God has made us like a system, input and output. It's a beautiful working machine that we are, and how we can take the things that God has given us and lower them by some religions make the mistake of saying, things are like they don't even want to talk about, when they go to the bathroom, they're even embarrassed to say it. But these are things that God has given us. They're lowered when we're disconnected with God, and everything we do is we're holistic beings, which I always say, but we're whole beings. We're spiritual and we're physical, and you can't separate them, and people who, well, one of my, if you want to call it, things that that's hard for me to look. I love eating. I love food, and there's a balance even in that. I could very easily, take a loaf of French bread and just butter it and num num num. Like, so there's balance in everything.
Exactly.
The point for me in this message was about to find out the shalom of our lives, between the chaos. In the chaos, sometimes God put us into, I would say, into some painful moments in our lives, okay? Because on the other hand, we will never be aware about what is shalom, okay? And 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 then suddenly things happen, okay, to our lives. Bad moments comes, situations that we cannot handle, situations that, uh, for example, uh, sometimes you don't have any power about a tornado or any disaster, natural disaster, and then God sends these moments. And the point is how could we find peace in those moments? How can we feel pleasure on those moments? And this is not about a problem, emotional problem or psychology problem that we are happy about to be
Right.
in a bad moment in our lives.
Right.
Okay. No, it's not about that. It's about that these moments uh, that incommodate our situation comes because in this world there is nothing that lasts. According to the Torah, everything will pass. Okay. And the only one thing that remains at the end is the Torah. Okay. Uh, so in honestly, I've been in difficult times because, well, a job, they gave me more responsibilities. Okay. So I have been learning how to deal with. Okay. So that accommodates. Okay. Accommodates because, when you know your work, I can do this and you know how to handle everything. But when there is something new that is your responsibility, then you have to take time to learn. Okay. But this give us the opportunity to grow. Then uh, it comes with my dad. Okay, with my dad, obviously he's right now in a very delicate situation of health. He's 93 years old, and now his kidneys are not working good. He has pulmonary, is that,
Pneumonia.
with problem with lungs, and then he's very weak right now. He has um, some situation with like he's very thin right now because he was not eating, so when you look at him 3 weeks ago and you look at him right now, it seems that his whole being has been diminished. Okay, so I need to take time to care him, but also to deal with him, because the problem is that there is not only physical. Okay, the problem is that he needs attention with psychological attention, and obviously with his spirit, because you know um, right now then his behavior is like a kid, and you need to have this kind of chesed that only God can put inside of us,
Right.
this patience, to deal with these situations. Okay, and then I have I am the um the little boy, because in my family, because all my brothers are older than me. So um, in this situation is really sad, because you can spend time with your brothers, and then you realize that they have not grown too much. Because they start to deal with for pennies, and for many things that I had to tell them. Oh, you don't understand, my dad is dealing with not only physical but emotional disease. uh, you need to be patient. You don't have to shout to him. You need to respect him, to honor him, and things like that. And then you have the other hand. Oh, we're gonna pray for you, that, but when it is, but in this moment, it's not only about to take care of him spiritually. It's about to take care of his body. Okay,
Yeah,
to go to
I
the
love that.
doctor,
Yeah, I love the
right?
analogy that you gave. Like when you're sitting with a full of thorns from the cactus, you don't sit down and relax and say, "Oh God, give me peace." You start pulling the thorns out. It's physical.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's something physical. So,
Yeah.
and then you start to negotiate with all of them. For example, yesterday I was because my father receives a pension from the government, and I had to go, because right now he cannot go to the bank.
Right.
Okay, I need to exchange his pension,
Right.
and he needs the money. And then I was, at the bank like 4 hours
Oh no.
trying to, and then I went to another government office, and took me 2 or 3 hours more, and the traffic was a mess.
Yes.
So, all these kind of things,
Yeah.
and you are receiving. Well, the problem is that you cannot receive in El Salvador. You cannot receive phone calls on your cell phone inside the bank. You
Oh.
need to get out from the bank.
Oh.
Okay, so if that is because it's for security, uh, but you can chat. So if someone wants to make a robbery, then they can, chat. But at the end, I was doing my job inside the bank, and then I had to attend some callings and say, "Oh, wait a minute, please," and get out, and then attend the.
Oh,
So this is not shalom. This is,
no.
a chaos. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so the point is that in the midst of the chaos, in the
Chaos.
tohu vavohu,
Yes.
right? Then there is God.
Yes.
And I know it's not a haftarah for this moment, because we're already past the 17th uh, of the days of attorney, but in some years, we read that haftarah of of Elijah. Okay, remember that he was in a cave. He was in that tohu wabohu,
Right.
in his problem, and I am alone. I am the last one. I feel bad, Lord. And Jezreel wants to kill me. After he saw, he
Yeah.
killed 500 men.
I know.
Okay, so uh, and he says that then it came a windy, very powerful. Okay,
Yeah.
and but God was not there.
Man, no.
Where was God?
In the silence.
In the silence.
Yeah.
Okay, so and this is something really interesting because as I said, you take, for example, a thorn inside of you. Oh, that is very painful. People knows. It depends on how painful it is, but 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 the problem is that you need to take out this thorn from you. And if you have any day you say you do that, then sometimes when you take out this, it's very painful because you know your skin
Right.
has a poison inside of you.
Right.
So, and it's painful, but after you suffer a little bit, then comes peace.
Right.
Okay. And this is for me Pinchas. Pinchas was in the midst of the chaos. That was, I don't know what he saw, but can you imagine between this debauchery and people falling dead, in the leader having sexual relations in the midst of the congregation, in the midst of the day?
Yeah.
So that was something that what Moshe did, and what Aaron did, and all the leaders did, cry
Yeah.
instead to act.
Yeah.
Okay. And
God
then,
had already told Moses to string up the
yeah,
leaders, all the leaders that had done that, but he was tired. He just
yeah.
didn't want to do it. Yeah.
And the problem is that, honestly, the problem is that there were two different people between this scene, Moab and Midian. So because the Midianites, uh, they said, "Oh, here, my woman."
Yes.
Okay,
The beautiful women that they had. Yes.
yeah, beautiful woman. And Moabites added, "Oh, this is my gal." Okay, so it was something between two different uh, nations. And I'm not saying that that was already happening, but for me, probably Moshe, you know, I don't know how to say that in English, but when you have some interests share with persons, for example, Moshe was living in Midian for 40 years.
He was married to a Midianite.
He was married to a Midianite.
Yeah.
Jethro was a Midianite.
Exactly.
His sons were
Or
half
Midianite.
Midianites.
Yeah. Zipporah was a
All the
Midianite.
relative, yeah, and
Yeah.
all the family was Midianite.
Yeah. This is a
Oh,
family
how
problem.
difficult! Yeah. So can you imagine the position of Moshe?
Yeah.
Oh, God, you are telling me to kill, I don't know, Chepito. We say Chepito, it means Jose
Yeah.
in a very,
Right.
very, I love Chepito. So,
Yeah.
uh,
He had already
and
done
I
that.
grow.
Yeah. He had
Yeah,
already done that with the Levites at the golden calf. And here again, 40 years, 38 years later, he's doing it again. Yeah.
yeah. In right now, they didn't act. So, and it's interesting this. It says that the wrath of God was against the congregation,
Right.
and then when Pinchas took the spear and threw to this couple, then the wrath of God is like another commandment was broken because there were a murder. So it's like God just look at this, okay, because that is what it says, and saw what Pinchas did. So uh, in the point is And there were some discussions in the Talmud that they were discussing about if Pinchas needs to be excommunicated from the Jewish, uh, you know, from Jewish learnings, because his act was really a murder, okay, assassination.
Right.
So, and it's very difficult to understand what is the border between assassination and say, oh, I have the seal of God inside of me.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right.
And this is just, and this is very important because people can take Pinchas and say, oh, we have to be like Pinchas. Okay, we need to be like Pinchas to kill everybody who doesn't believe in God. Okay,
That's what
that is what
happened.
Christianity, that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
Islamic
But not only
does.
Christianity, that's what happened. That was the whole discussion with this Baruch Goldstein, who went and
Yeah.
killed a whole bunch of, I think it was Muslims, no, in front of a mosque. Yeah, he did that, or in front of the temple. Yeah, I can't remember all the details.
And the
Yeah.
other guy
Yeah.
who killed many guys in Israel with a gun because he believed he was like a Pinchas. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It's not what he's,
So, and that's probably why the Bible is broken, because that is not a complete piece. Okay. Yes, it was like a medicine for that moment, and it's very just for that moment especially. Okay. Not is something that we need to reproduce. Okay. But what is important is the spirit of Pinchas, because according to the prophets, then that same spirit of Pinchas was in Elijah. And then we read in the Besorah of, I don't know if it was Matitayahu or in the Besorah of Yochanan, it says that John the Baptist, in knowing like that in Christianity, uh, eh, he was the same spirit of Pinchas and the same spirit of Elijah.
interesting. And didn't
Yeah,
Yeshua also say, take a sword, take your swords? Or
no, Peter took the
No.
sword.
no,
Remember that?
it wasn't Yeshua who said to them that they would need their
No, I can remember, honestly. I don't remember.
I do remember
But
that.
yeah, where
yeah,
did it
I
say
remember.
that?
Yeshua said, take up your sword. At one point, anyway, one point he
Yeah.
said, take up your sword and
Yeah.
follow me or something.
Yeah, but the point is, uh, the point is the spirit, and the spirit is not really that uh, Pinchas is inside of me. Okay,
No.
that is very important.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because
It's the
it's
same
not
intention.
Pinchas. Yeah, yeah, that is something that we need to understand. That
Yeah.
is just he the same spirit is to have the same mentality, to have the same thoughts, uh, and that is the same spirit. Okay.
Yes.
For example, we are together and we have a same spirit
Right.
to worship God,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that Peggy is inside of me or I'm inside of Peggy. Okay.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
um so in but the point is that the today is very sad, and and it's interesting that we read in the portion today that the seal of God was again inside of them, and then the seal of God was in Pinchas. And there is something interesting about relation between in a marriage. Sometimes it's good to have seal, okay, because that is a sense of belong. You belong to me and I belong to you, okay. Uh, when there is no seal, then probably you don't care.
Right.
So uh, in some way is good in its measure. in at the end. So is that the main message is uh, how can I find in Tohu Babuhu when comes in that is the lesson. The Spirit of God was moving on the waters. So when we have some troubles in life, go to the Torah. Okay, then you will find peace. I don't know what power has the Torah and all the Ketubim and the Nevi'im and on all these books that every time I open them, it's like these books brings life to me.
Yes.
Okay, bring peace to me.
Yes.
I know, uh, I read a lot of things, but when you open your Bible and then you start to just watch one chapter, so then you start to feel something like a peace inside of you.
Yeah.
In this is unique sense of any book.
Right.
And yes, obviously, we need to act. That's another thing.
Yes.
Okay, to get the peace, if that is true, we have to fight for the peace
Exactly.
because
I went through.
we need to look for the peace.
You need to look, and I went through that this week because something happened in my family, and I needed to know. Believe it or not, it was because of your message that I knew I needed to deal with it, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to act. And I remember that the Bible says, "In the counsel of many is wisdom." So I spoke to a friend. In this case, I didn't have to speak to more than one because what she said to me just made so much sense. And then I acted upon it, and all of a sudden it was solved and the peace was restored. And then the next day had to go, and I went to visit this lady Phyllis, who is was my nanny. And it was an hour drive to go to see her. She's in a home. And on the way, I felt such peace. And in my mind, I just started to go through all the things this week that had brought me joy and that I had seen blessings. And it's funny about what you said, that everything is nothing is eternal except God. That's the only thing that we can depend on is God. And there was this car that a truck passed with two skidoos going to the beach. They're going to have fun, and here am I going to visit this lady. And I looked at those two skidoos and I said, that's not going to be here for long. Everything is going to be gone. The only thing that I have is my relationship with God. And I started praising him. And I cannot tell you, just in praising him, I got there and I was begging God to help my light to shine through to my family. And there was, I brought my guitar to sing her happy birthday. And as I start singing and singing songs that it just perked her up. And then suddenly I decided to sing a Hebrew song. And this lady that was there, and another lady who I hadn't been there before, she started singing Hebrew. And she says, "Oh, you're Jewish." She was so excited because everybody else was French. She's way out and far away from our community. And she loved this song. She was so happy. And even Phyllis loved the songs in Hebrew. And they were so happy. And my brother and my sister-in-law looking at us and, what's going on here? I could see God was stirring the soup. It was so beautiful. You go through these hard things in our lives. Nobody can save us out of them. We have to go through them. And we have to always say, okay, God, what is my part in this? What can I do to get out of it? And I'm always begging God, search me, know my heart, try me, see what's inside me. And he's always doing that and bringing these situations. What did I do to bring this situation on in my life? Why is this happening to me?
That
And
I
the last
really,
thing, just
Yes.
I like to finish it with this.
Yes.
And the last thing, eliminate the toxins.
Yes.
that I don't know what kind of toxins you are in front, okay? And this is very important because, for example, with my dad, I need to eliminate some toxins of some commentaries, for example, from family, and I have to say, oh, I need to comprehend them, I need to understand them,
Right.
and they are talking because not because that is really what they think, probably is because they have fear and they cannot know how to handle the fear.
Right.
Okay, so when you do this kind of things, you eliminate toxins. Then you eliminate toxins, for example, when you said, oh, I don't want to stay here in this moment because these people is talking something that is not good or is not uh, for God, is not honoring God. For example, uh, sometimes I have to leave. Uh, we are, for example, in a lunch, and then they start to talk about women. Okay,
Right.
and you are eating, you are in the midst of persons, but when they start to we say in Spanish aumentar el volumen, but when they start to talk with obscenity, then, oh, I have to leave, thank you. You don't have to tell them, oh, you are a sinner. No,
Right.
just polite and say, okay, I have to go, I'm sorry, excuse
Right.
me. uh, you know, those things is very important, because if not, this kind of toxins will enter in your mind.
Right.
And what happened is the same process of Israel.
Mm.
Okay, it says they invite Israel to commit fornication,
Right.
and then they said, oh, let's worship Baal Peor. So I receive all the toxins, all that, or their waste, or
Right.
their excrement,
Right.
spirituality.
Right.
So, and then I surrender to this Baal Peor. So I become one of them. Okay, that is the process. So, uh, in to have borders is very important, but sometimes people believe that, oh, just to worship God and to read Torah and to have a good relation. No, sometimes you need to flee. You need to say, oh, bye bye. This is not for me. These kind of things protect your heart. It's not about you are alone in the world. No, it's about that. It's very important to have um, healthy relations with people, with the society,
Right.
and so that is very important to get shalom.
Mm.
You will never have shalom if there is something inside of you that is dealing with them. Okay, that you say, oh, I don't believe in that, or to say, oh, I need to accept them because that is, for example, uh, I can work with persons who are homosexuals, and I had to work because this is part of the society, but I don't want to go to eat with them, for example, to share moments, because they start to talk about obscenity.
Right.
So uh, I'm sorry, it's not about I hate them. It's about that I need to eliminate these toxins.
Yeah.
So that is help for us.
Right.
Please, Miriam, you wanted to finish with something.
No, I agreed with what Peggy said very much, but I have to go. My family's waiting downstairs.
Okay.
So, but thank you, Mauricio, for a wonderful message. And Peggy pretty much said what, and both of you said what I want to say. And
Okay.
thank you for
Enjoy the rest of
wonderful
your
message.
day
Shabbat
with your
shalom.
family. Bye-bye, Miriam.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Angel, did you want to say something before we close?
Yes, I would love bring the point of view of what it means to be unfaithful to God. As we know that God, what God represents, um, and if we think about God as a spirit, as a consciousness, um, we're starting to see the things differently. To the point, if we don't look at it as someone who is giving us instructions in order to follow them without any understanding, but like an overlord or something like that. But it's more, it's more like you know, what basically we do is betrain ourselves
Yes.
in the sense of when we know that we are made in the image of the Creator, which means we are part spirit. We are not only made of physicality, which means there is a part in us that it's part of God, which
Yes.
means when we act on these ways, or like acting wrong with other people, stealing, or giving our bodies and savage our bodies into sexual immorality.
Angel, I'm sorry. Can I interrupt you just for 1 second? Because I know you usually go into a long thing, and
Yes,
Richard has his hand raised up. I just would like to hear what he has to say, just for a moment, please, if you
sure.
don't mind, and then we'll continue with you.
Hi, I'm Richard. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Richard.
Okay, so I'm Richard. I stumbled into this group. I do a lot of Torah study today, Saturdays. I do other things. I'll just comment real quickly on what was said about men being tempted. All right, so I get tempted a lot. I live in a place where there's lots of temptation. Okay, I have to tell you that.
Lots of
But
what? Sorry, I didn't understand.
temptation,
Okay,
temptation.
temptation.
Okay, there's a lot of production here, but I'll just say this: that I about handling temptation. I do well by making certain undesirable behaviors harder to carry out. And I'm thinking of a story, Homer's Homer's Odyssey, when Homer knew he'd be tempted by sirens, and he had his crew tie him to a mast so he couldn't move, and put wax in his ears so he couldn't hear. Um, so I don't do well with New Age methods. So I'll be back next week. I just wanted to introduce myself. So I will now mute myself.
Thank you, Richard.
Basically, what I was trying to say is that we are betraying ourselves to the point that we bring ourselves to a lower state, which means we're starting to act more uh, uh, more like following the desires, the feelings, and these feelings and desires govern us and govern our actions. So we are moved only by these desires and not. Um, and we are basically what we're doing is voluntarily we are betraying who we are as a man. So, which, as I said before, it's not only of physicality with a body, but it's also uh, as a spiritual being. Okay. So when we separate ourselves, we just decide to separate ourselves, and you're giving up, you know, of of what we are. But
Can you give me an example of what you're talking about, Angel? Because
what more unfaithful?
you repeat this every week, the same thing, but I want to hear an example of what you mean by it.
To betray yourself, it's knowing what is wrong and you do it still. You know what I mean?
Right.
You are betraying the whole, knowing, basically knowing the fact that you are able to know that is wrong. That tells you already that this is not from, it does not come from a body. It comes from an intelligence that is within us. It's call it spirit, call it soul, call it consciousness, call it, So when we act without thinking, we are, we are like acting like animals, like barbarians, like barbaric people, where the only way that they act is according to what they feel and what they sense and what they, what is good to them, but they are not acting in a much higher level of understanding, of seeing, and knowing that you might not know, let's say things like, for example, if you are a banker and you are in a new position and you're starting to do things, some tricks, that you think that they're legal, okay, but actually it's a way how to avoid the law by doing some tricks, and you start stealing money from other people. But because the law has not yet been updated, you keep doing it. So that is, betraying yourself in the sample. It's kind of an example of knowing that is wrong, but you still keep doing it,
Okay, but how does this relate to the portion for this week?
Well, being unfaithful to God, being unfaithful to yourself, if you are not faithful with yourself, how can you gonna be faithful with supposedly, the Creator, which is and we know that all creation is one in the Creator, as God said that we are all, God is one, so the entire creation is one. We are part of this creation as a human beings, and if we are not, in harmony with His consciousness, we'll say his way of thinking, or the way to act, and how God acts, because we need to remember that God is not a vengeance, vengative God, as we God is not impose everybody to follow like slave. No, because He wouldn't have given us free will to decide and to give us life in abundance and to experiment our decisions and to grow by ourselves. But God is, as we know, it's wisdom, it's love, it's benevolence, and it's kindness, and it's compassion.
What are you reading from?
From some what I wrote, some on my notes.
Okay.
So this is what God is. So if we are meant to be in harmony, or let's call it in unity, echad, with the Creator, we have to practice this thing. No living in a life that is led by only desires and fleshy, whatever feelings. And no, we have to let what is in us, what we are made of, which is part of the Creator, the Spirit, to lead us. That is why we see all, the great works of all these people, men who choose to live this life, led by this understanding of God's Spirit. We see that in Yeshua, all the works that He did, everything that we see, all the miracles, people healing, people, all this, it comes from God. It comes from the essence and the Spirit of the Creator. And when we stay in that state, it's when I believe that is what we are. This is the image of the Creator that I have of a human, okay, the image
But
of the
but
creator in
Angel,
humanity.
it's impossible to be in that state
But it is,
100% of the time
okay.
because we're
It's never
living on this
possible
earth.
because the spirit is already in you.
I know, but we're talking about the
It's just
struggles.
it's just discovering. Okay.
So are you, wait a minute. Are
Our
you
problem
telling
is
me,
to discover
wait a minute.
of us
Are
and
you telling me that you never struggle with anything? That
hey,
you live 100% in the presence of the creator and that you don't have any problems in your life?
I'm going to
Is that what
tell
you're
you,
saying?
at least I try to have a good consciousness, do what is good, as every time I have to others,
But we all do that here.
I'm not, I have days also that they are not easy. As a human, I feel sometimes, I make mistakes, as my wife, I say things that I shouldn't say, but this is part of us. But in this duality, we have always to choose to do the right thing
Exactly.
and not let us ourselves to let our feelings and our desires that they could be allowed, could be, oh, I want to have money, I want to be have a great life, so I will do anything possible in order to get there. So there we come to, well, you're greedy, you start being greedy, you start being robbing people, you start to do a lot of things that you shouldn't do. So is this what God wants us to
Well, this is why he gave us the 10 commandments.
yeah, but listen.
That's so we can have a guideline on how to be.
Yeah, well, this is a guidance. It's true, but everybody knows, okay? Everybody, like for example, the case of robbing someone, which is one of the commandments, you shall not steal, right?
Yeah.
Everybody knows unconsciously, consciously, and they know that if you have something that belongs to you and somebody comes to you and take it, that is wrong. Nobody will say, oh yeah, oh, take it, you know?
No,
So
that's
that
not
is
true.
easy.
Some people think it's right. Some people think it is their right to take from others. That's why we have one nations coming in and taking other nations. There are people who think I'm starving. I have a right to take from somebody else who has more than me. They really believe that that's wrong, that's
But
right.
but there is also this the way of acting in that way of the feelings, and so we are governed by these feelings instead of saying, okay, hold on, let's find out what is the main problem and the main reason why this nation, okay, has to steal from another nation. Then you realize that the people in the world, okay, that they are in charge of all these resources, the controlling the resources, are creating this lack of resources, so that they can create conflicts, and it goes beyond. I can go and
I understand, Anja, but right now, today, we're talking about Pinchas. What you're giving us is, yes, I agree with you, but it's very general. The reason that we discuss each week, each of these portions, is because it has something specific that we can use to deal with in our lives. We want to teach Torah in a way that it can teach us how to live. How do we take the lessons of the Torah and learn how to live? A lot of these things that you say are generalities, and yeah, we can agree with them. But what are you saying? What did you learn about Pinchas this week?
But obviously, what we read in the scriptures is like by the action of Pinchas, it seems that everything stopped. So, in other words, like something that become very, like the sexual immorality that was spreading in the tents of, of Israel, all of a suddenly stopped by one action. Okay, do I agree that death, in that case, well, it was, Pinchas, did it, and we see the results afterwards. Okay, this is how I see it.
Yeah.
But immorality, it's like, remember that Israel was living in Egypt. In Egypt, there were, so many gods and so many, worshiping and so many.
Yes.
And I'm not think. I mean, you can be a very extremist religious Jew thinking that in Egypt the Jews, they were not doing a lot of things wrong. I have to say that we are in America, and there's a lot of Jews that are doing a lot of things that are wrong.
And they're not the only ones.
So and they might not be religious, but that is no excuse. As every Jew, is accountable to the Creator for their actions, as we were chosen, okay, to be an example to other nations.
Exactly. And we're an example by keeping his commandments. Anyway, we're coming to the end of this session, and I want to thank you again, Mauricio. Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Richard. And I would want to wish you the rest of a Shabbat Shalom. May you have a day of rest and a day of peace. And God willing, we'll see you again next week when we look at, who knows, next week is Matot Maseh. Okay. God bless you all.
I bless you.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom, everyone.
Bye.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye-bye.
Shabbat Shalom.